Who was Dan? In the early days of the patriarchs, when Jacob, the father of the 12 tribes of Israel, was growing his family, a special moment occurred. Rachel, his beloved wife, had not been able to bear children and watched with sadness as her sister Leah bore Jacob many sons. Desperate for a child of her own, Rachel devised a plan. She gave her maidservant Bilhah to Jacob, hoping that through her she might become a mother in a different way. And so Bilhah bore Jacob a son, and Rachel named him Dan. "God hath judged me," she said, feeling that the Lord had finally heard her prayers. The name Dan, meaning judge, became a symbol of this judgment and favor from God. As time passed, Dan grew up alongside his brothers, each destined to become the father of a great tribe. Dan's descendants formed the tribe of Dan, one of the 12 tribes that would carry on the legacy of Israel. When the time came for the Israelites to settle in the Promised Land, the tribe of Dan was given land near the coast of the Mediterranean Sea, a region known for its fertile plains and strategic location. But settling this land was not easy. The Danites faced powerful enemies, especially the Philistines, fierce warriors who lived nearby. As they struggled to defend their land, the tribe of Dan began searching for a new home, a safer place where they could thrive. During their search for a new territory, the Danites came across a small peaceful city called Laish. The city was isolated and unprotected, making it an easy target. The Danites captured Laish, destroyed its inhabitants, and renamed the city after their ancestor Dan. However, during this conquest, something troubling happened. On their journey, the Danites had encountered a man named Micah who had a shrine filled with idols. In an act of greed, they stole one of these idols and brought it with them to their new home in Laish. Instead of worshiping the God of Israel, the Danites began to worship this stolen idol, turning their hearts away from God. This act of idolatry would stain their history for generations. Despite the tribe's drift into idolatry, God raised up a great warrior from among the Danites. His name was Samson, a man of incredible strength and courage. From birth, Samson was chosen by God to deliver Israel from the oppression of the Philistines. Samson's life was filled with remarkable feats of strength. He tore apart lions with his bare hands, fought off entire armies with just the jawbone of a donkey, and brought down the great Philistine temple in a final act of defiance. Though Samson had his own personal failings, particularly in his relationship with Delilah, he became a symbol of God's power working through flawed human beings. His story is one of both tragedy and triumph, and he remains one of Israel's most famous judges. As centuries passed, the tribe of Dan became increasingly associated with their idolatrous ways. This spiritual rebellion was so significant that when the book of Revelation was written, something curious happened. In the vision of the 144,000 servants of God, representatives from each of the 12 tribes of Israel, the tribe of Dan was omitted. The absence of Dan from this list has puzzled scholars for generations, but many believe it was a consequence of their unfaithfulness and their early turn to idol worship. Dan's story is one of both potential and peril. From the joy of his birth, when Rachel declared that God had judged her favorably, to the rise of his powerful tribe, the early days were filled with promise. But the tribe's fall into idolatry and their disconnection from God's ways serve as a powerful warning about the dangers of losing sight of true faith. In the end, while the tribe of Dan became infamous for their idolatry, they also produced Samson, one of Israel's most legendary heroes. His strength and devotion to delivering Israel are a reminder that even in the midst of failure, there is always the possibility of redemption. Continue watching for more. Subscribe and like. Be blessed.